in December of 1982, he went to a Campus Crusade for Christ conference in Alabama somewhere. And he came home and he told us, he said, Mom and Dad said, I signed up to go to Russia next summer on a mission trip. And he said, so I wanted to tell you all. And so Jack said, David, said, you can't go. Said, I haven't raised you for 18 years for you to go off to Russia on a mission trip. And at that time, the Iron Curtain was still up, and said, I can't, you can't do that. And David said, well, Dad, let me ask you a question. Said, you and Mom have always told me that right after you all adopted me, that one Sunday morning in church, you all dedicated me to God. And for God to help you all raise me and teach me. And now, are you telling me that I can't go to Russia because you're tending to me and going to see about me? And so you're taking me back from God, and you're going to be responsible for everything. Jack sat there a few seconds, a few minutes really. And finally he said, David, you can go to Russia with my blessings. And he did. And of course, they go under the pretense of teaching English to people, or they do, but anyway. And they knew back then that really sharing and reading the Bible with them would be dangerous. You had to be careful. But anyway, one day he was walking down the street in I forget the name of the city in Russia. And this Russian young man stopped him because David had his Bible under his arm. And he asked David about the Bible and asked him if he could look at it. And of course, I think it was all plotted, that they watched those students, those missionary kids like a hawk. And anyway, while they were doing that, the KGB picked him up, and they took David to the interrogation area building, and they told him that because he was sharing the Bible with someone, that they had to keep him, arrest him, and send him to outer Siberia for the rest of his life. And and I don't know, it was a long period a long interrogation. But finally they told him, or maybe he asked if he could call his parents. One morning about 1:30, my phone rang, and it said, would you accept a collect call from Russia? And I said, yes. And David said, Mom, said, I've been picked up by the KGB, and they're sending me to Siberia. So he said, I won't ever see you and Dad and Shelley again on Earth. But he said, we'll see each other in heaven. And clunk, down went the phone. I just put the phone down, and I just dropped on my knees right there by the bed. And I said, God, There's nothing I can do. This is all in your hands. I said, you will have to take control. And I said, if this is your will for David's life, I said, just let me have the courage and the spiritual strength to leave this in your hands and not try to figure it out myself. I did not even wake Jack up because I knew I'd have been up the rest of the night. After I did that, I prayed a while. I got in bed and I went sound asleep because I guess that's the one time in my life I can say I completely turned loose of a situation and put it in God's hands. And the next morning when I told Jack, he said, oh my goodness, let's get in touch with the American embassy in Russia and get them to see what they can do or call our congressman or something. I said, Jack, I said, I think maybe you should do what I did last night. I said, I turned that over to God because I said, anything you and I will do humanly, we might just stir up more trouble. We don't know all the details. We don't know what we're up against. I said, let's just pray. Let's not talk about this. Let's just pray. And it was a long 3 weeks, but 3 weeks later, I got a phone call from David. He was in New York City to tell me that what time his flight would be in Houston for us to pick him up. And so once we did, we didn't really go to bed that night. We sat up and talked, and we got him to explain to us the whole story and what all he went through. And it wasn't funny, but it was funny in a way, because he said, after they let me make the phone call to you and we talked some more, they finally decided they would let me go. And so said, I thanked them and I reached over to get my Bible to leave. And they said, oh no, you can't have that Bible. You can't take it. Said, we have to keep it. And David said, I knew they would burn it or throw it away. And he said, I just sat back down and I told them I could not leave without my Bible. I said, son, I said, I could have bought you 100 Bibles. He said, Mom, would I really have been standing up for God if I had let them keep my Bible? Because they would think, well, it doesn't mean any more to him than that. He said, I told him I could not leave without my Bible. And he said they had to go off and meet in another room and discuss that. And then they came back and they said, we will let you take your Bible if you promise us you'll take it to your hotel room and lock it in your suitcase and not take it back out until you leave the country. And so they gave him his Bible and he left. And I have learned many deep spiritual lessons through the experiences that my son and daughter have had on these overseas mission trips. And I thought for a young man his age, I would have probably, if they told me to leave, and I'd probably just left my Bible there. But he was grounded enough to know that if he didn't stand up for God that much, his testimony would have really been ruined. So it taught me a great lesson. And he's a minister today, and he loves people, and he's my two children have been a big inspiration to me.